into the final topic, and that is you may have heard that Bill Gates came out and essentially revised his climate change scenario.
Yes.
And this is something that's always gotten up my craw because I know people that have worked in the environment and on climate issues, and I've always felt, look, you have the deniers like the Donald Trumps, which I think is so ridiculous to think that we could transfer huge amounts of carbon from underground to the ocean and to the air and not have it affect the climate. Then you had the doomsdayers, who, oh my God, the world's going to end in 2020. Then you had the realists, which I put myself in, where yes, the carbon problem is very real. Yes, we need to do something, but we don't have to solve it tomorrow. And I think our strategy should be to avoid the unmanageable and manage the unavoidable, right? And that's what I think we're doing. If you look at most utilities, I know Southern Energy, Constellation, some of the bigger companies, by 2045 or 2050, they're going to be all alternative fuels or alternative sources. So I think we're getting there. Trump is trying to throw a wrench in the cogs by slowing things down, but I think it's inexorable. So I think we're at least on a realistic path. I think we have 30 to 50 years, but I'd love to hear I've given my thoughts. What do you folks think?
That's interesting. I'm sorry to cut you off there, Ashley. I kind of feel like this is one of those things where it's like shifting targets, and it's almost like a fad. In the 2010s, everything was about, renewable sources of energy, whether it was, and solar obviously had its moment in the sun, no pun intended. Um, I think the challenge of this decade and the next decade actually is energy consumption because of how much AI requires and the rapid expansion and use of AI. And so when I look at the future of some of what we're talking about here, battery storage and battery capacity, I think is the ball game for the immediate present. And that is something that right now I could tell you, there are major efforts underway within Department of Defense, particularly convening a number of task forces, bringing in experts from all over the world to talk about how are we going to have the battery capacity and the battery storage to power the AI revolution that's happening. And mind you, the majority of lithium, which is the main source we use right now for batteries, that is mined in the world, is controlled by China. And so this is also a national security situation. We had a lot of conversation the last couple of years about chips and Taiwan. Let me tell you, battery, lithium, rare earth minerals, Africa and China are going to be hotspots for that.
Well, absolutely. That's why kind of the whole tariff issue with China is happening with over the I mean, some of the sticking points are obviously rare earth. I don't know. Listen, I don't really I think that people like Bill Gates, just like when celebrities endorse candidates, like why is Bill Gates all of a sudden the expert on the environment? I know he spent a lot of money and time, but so going back to that, I think it was very big of him to change his mind because he's been the biggest climate the world's falling apart there is. I mean, my son was taught in elementary school, like, scared them to death. They said they were gonna be like, everyone's gonna die in 15 years. So, I mean, like, there was a sky is falling type of atmosphere. But listen, that's why I think to try to get off the rare earth issue though, Kurt, that's why so many people are investing in nuclear again. I mean, who would have thought after 3 Mile Island that we would have ever been investing in nuclear and small nuclear reactors that can be built? So there is energy to me is the new gold or the new oil or whatever it is, and it's going to continue to be that way. But is it going to be renew? Is it going to continue down the renewable path? At least 80% of it. Hopefully.
Yeah, well, here's what we do know too is we have a capacity issue. We have too many people who need energy and not enough energy to meet their capacity, especially in states like Texas where we see what happens when the grid has too much pressure and stress on it, it can't meet it. So this is going to have to get resolved at some point in the next 25 years when you look at where migrating patterns are, where humans are literally locating to. Um, we don't have, and here's the truth, we don't have the answer for that, and that is alarming. That when you actually play it out, I can't tell you 25 years from now what the main source of power that's going to power the grid in Texas, one of the largest states and most populous states in the union is.
Well, all I can say is that this is another area where China is doing it right because I've always believed we should fire on all cylinders. And we've talked about this before, but it seems like you have one party that was against fossil fuels and one party that was against alternative fuels. Biden, to his credit, particularly the second part of his administration, said, let's do both. Drill, baby, drill, and let's go full speed ahead on alternatives. That's what we should be doing. And frankly, nuclear too. China's building a record number of coal power plants. They're building a record number of solar panels, and they're building a record number of nuclear plants. And we should have, there's no reason when you consider how safe the nuclear reactors are these days. We've never lost a single person. I don't think 3 Mile Island, what, one person died, maybe. And I know there was that accident in Japan that scared a lot of people, but still, it's very, very safe. We should be getting 20 or 30% of our power from nuclear. But
Well, you
anyway,
like to think that a lot's come along since 1979 in terms of our
yes,
ability to be more safe.
one would certainly help. Well, I think we're gonna have to leave it there. Another great dialogue as always, and thanks to all of you for joining us on Practically Political. We look forward to seeing you next time, and happy November to everyone.